The diplomatic facade. The grand conclave of the Galactic Assembly fell into an unusual hush as the human delegation entered the immense chamber. The representatives of over 200 species watched with varying degrees of curiosity, disdain, and caution as Ambassador Elena Reyes led her team through the central walkway. Humans had only joined the Assembly 8 standard years ago, making them relative newcomers to galactic politics. The human representatives may approach the speaking dais, announced First Arbiter Galactic, his forearms positioned in the formal gesture of recognition. Elena straightened her diplomatic uniform and stepped forward, flanked by Admiral James Chen and Science Envoy Dr. Imani Okoro. The vast chamber's architecture was designed to intimidate, soaring crystalline arches and floating hover platforms arranged in ascending rings to accommodate the diverse physiologies of member species. Today, nearly every seat was filled. News of the confrontation had spread quickly. Esteemed members of the Assembly, Elena began, her voice carrying the practiced calm of a seasoned diplomat. We thank you for convening this emergency session. The United Earth Confederation seeks peaceful resolution to the territorial dispute with the Sarkonian Empire. From an elevated platform opposite the humans, Ambassador Commander Vexstar of the Sarkonians rose to his impressive 4-meter height. His metallic exoskeleton caught the chamber's light, creating an intimidating display as specialized breathing vents along his neck pulsed with barely contained aggression. There is no dispute. Vexstar's voice resonated through the chamber, the universal translator struggling to filter the harmonics of contempt. There is only human transgression. Your kind has expanded into 17 star systems in under 8 years, systems that border the ancient territories of the Sarkonian Empire. Elena maintained her diplomatic smile. The systems in question were categorized as unclaimed by Assembly Charter. We have established peaceful colonies, research outposts, and trading hubs that benefit multiple species in the region. Vexstar's breathing vents flared wider. The Assembly's bureaucratic designations are irrelevant. These systems have been under Sarkonian observation for 7,000 cycles. We were simply waiting for the appropriate time to incorporate them. A low murmur spread through the chamber. The Sarkonians were one of the oldest civilizations in the Assembly, with technology that outclassed most member species. Their empire spanned nearly an eighth of the galaxy, and their military prowess was legendary. Few dared to challenge them directly. Elena clasped her hands calmly before her. Ambassador Commander, we'd recognize the Sarkonian Empire's ancient heritage and respected position. The Earth Confederation seeks only to establish mutual cooperation. Perhaps we could form a joint development commission for these border territories. Admiral Chen shifted his stance slightly behind Elena. To most observers, it appeared insignificant, but those with military training noted how his hand moved subtly closer to his communication device. Vexstar emitted a sharp clicking sound, the Sarkonian equivalent of derisive laughter. You offer cooperation after your encroachment. Humans emerged from your backwater world mere decades ago. Your species was squabbling over primitive resources when the Sarkonians were already mapping the stars. First Arbiter Galactic raised a mediating limb. Perhaps we should review the territorial designation protocols according to Assembly Regulation 592B, which states, "Your regulations are meaningless," Vexstar interrupted. The humans' expansion rate defies all precedent. Their technology advances at an alarming pace. They build colonies faster than any species we have encountered. Even their physiology is suspiciously adaptive. He leaned forward, looming over his podium. The Sarkonian Empire recognizes an emerging threat. Elena maintained her composure. Earth has no hostile intentions toward any Assembly member. Our growth reflects our cooperative efforts with multiple species and our adaptive nature, not aggression. Then prove it, Vexstar demanded. Withdraw from all systems bordering Sarkonian territory immediately. Those worlds contain civilian populations and established infrastructure, Elena replied evenly. Withdrawal is not a reasonable request. The chamber's atmospheric processors strained as Vextar's exoskeleton heated in a physiological display of aggression. Then the Sarkonian Empire formally invokes the ancient right of dominance. Gasps echoed throughout the chamber. The ancient right was a rarely used provision dating back to the Assembly's founding, allowing for a limited military engagement to settle territorial disputes without triggering full-scale war. By invoking this right, Vextar continued, we challenge Earth to a decisive military engagement, one fleet against another at a neutral location. The victor claims undisputed rights to the contested systems. All eyes turned to the human delegation. The general expectation throughout the chamber was immediate capitulation. Human military technology was widely considered functional, but unrefined compared to the ancient Sarkonian war machine. Admiral Chen leaned forward, whispering something in Alina's ear. She listened, then gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. The Earth Confederation acknowledges your challenge, Alina announced, her voice steady. As the challenged party, we select the Tau-CD neutral zone as the engagement location. Standard assembly battle protocols will apply. Vextar's breathing vents pulsed with what his species would recognize as satisfaction. The Sarkonians accept these terms. In 14 standard cycles, we will demonstrate to the galaxy why some species should recognize their proper place in the cosmic hierarchy. As the assembly moderators hurriedly began reviewing the ancient protocols for formalized military engagement, Admiral Chen received an urgent communication on his neural interface. After a moment, he touched Ambassador Rice's shoulder and whispered again. Alina's expression remained diplomatic, but those familiar with human micro-expressions might have detected a fleeting hint of resolution crossing her features. One final matter. She addressed the Sarkonian delegation. Given the formal nature of this challenge, the Earth Confederation wishes to clarify that all previous diplomatic courtesies will be suspended during the engagement. Earth will be operating under Protocol 0. The statement meant nothing to most of the assembled delegates, but Admiral Chen straightened his uniform with what almost looked like professional satisfaction. Vextar dismissed the statement with a contemptuous gesture. Hide behind your mysterious protocols if you wish. The outcome is predetermined. The Sarkonians have never lost a formal challenge. Neither have humans, Alina replied simply. We look forward to a educational exchange. As the human delegation departed the chamber, assembly observers noted how other species subtly moved aside, creating a wider path than protocol required. Despite humanity's reputation for politeness and restraint, something about their quiet confidence after accepting an apparently hopeless challenge left the chamber buzzing with speculation. In the Private Assembly Security Observation Center, Chief Analyst Zinvok of the Medusan Confederation turned to his Polarian colleague. What is this Protocol 0 the human mentioned? He asked, his bioluminescent patterns reflecting confusion. The Polarian data specialist accessed the limited assembly records on Earth's military structure. After several moments, she looked up with an expression of puzzlement. I can find only one reference, she replied. In a recorded statement during Earth's first contact briefing, when asked about human military doctrine, General Miranda Santos stated, Earth operates under multiple diplomatic protocols in interstellar relations. Protocol 0 simply states, stop being polite. Zinvok's bioluminescence pulsed with confusion. That's it. Stop being polite. What does that even mean? The Polarian sensory tendrils contracted in what translated as concern. I don't know, but I'm suddenly very interested in reviewing Earth's planetary classification, and I recommend we strengthen the observation shields for the Tau-CD neutral zone. 14 days later, the galaxy would understand exactly what happened when humans stopped being polite. Aboard the UES Intrepid, the flagship of Earth's supposedly modest fleet positioned at the edge of the Tau-CD neutral zone, Admiral Chen stood before a holographic command display. 12 Earth vessels, a mix of destroyers, cruisers, and support ships, had arranged themselves in what appeared to be a standard defensive formation. To an experienced military observer, The arrangement seemed textbook but uninspired. "Status report," Chen ordered, his voice calm but commanding. Captain Naomi Wright, the Intrepid's commanding officer, stepped forward. "All ships confirm Protocol 0 authentication complete. Awaiting your final authorization." Chen nodded. "And our guests?" "Senior representatives from the Assembly Security Council have been escorted to the observation deck as requested," Wright replied. "All non-combatant observation vessels are maintaining position at the designated safety perimeter." "Excellent." Chen's gaze remained fixed on the tactical display. "Initiate Lazarus Protocol. Authorization, Chen Alpha 7 Awakening." Throughout the human fleet, something remarkable happened. Panels that had appeared to be standard hull plating retracted, revealing concealed weapon systems. Ships that had registered as mid-size cruisers on standard scans suddenly projected significantly different energy signatures. Propulsion systems that had appeared conventional flared with technologies no assembly species had witnessed from humans before. On the observation deck, the gathered assembly representatives gasped collectively. The Polarian Security Council members' sensory tendrils twisted in shock as she turned to her Medusan colleague. "They'd been hiding their true capabilities," she whispered, "for years." Across the neutral zone, the Sarkonian war fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 35 vessels arranged in an attack pattern that had conquered countless opponents over 7 millennia. Their ships were massive constructs of advanced alloys and energy fields, bristling with weapon systems that could reduce planets to molten slag. "The humans have assembled their pitiful defense," Commander Supreme Krasnar observed from the bridge of the Sarkonian flagship Eternal Dominance. 12 vessels against our 35. Their defeat will be instructive to other ambitious young species. Strategic Overseer Vexlar, Ambassador Commander Vexstar's military counterpart, studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. "Commander Supreme, I'm detecting anomalies in the human fleet configuration. Their energy signatures are changing." Krasnar dismissed the concern with an irritated gesture. "Primitive attempts at deception. The Sarkonians have conquered species far more advanced than these humans. Commence the approach. Standard obliteration formation." The Sarkonian fleet moved forward with the confidence of a predator approaching wounded prey. For 7,000 years, this same approach had heralded the end of conflicts, often before they truly began. But as they crossed the halfway point of the neutral zone, Strategic Overseer Vexlar's confusion deepened. "Commander Supreme, the human vessels are transforming. Sensors indicate weapon systems emerging from concealed compartments. Energy readings are spiking beyond anything in our database for Earth technology." For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty passed through Krasnar's mind. "Impossible. Our intelligence on human military capabilities is comprehensive." "Incoming transmission from the human flagship," announced the communications officer. Krasnar straightened his imposing frame. "Display." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main view screen, his expression calm but resolute. "Commander Supreme Krasnar of the Sarkonian Empire. I am Admiral James Chen of the United Earth Defense Force." "State your purpose, human," Krasnar replied dismissively. "A courtesy, Commander Supreme," Chen answered. "In accordance with Earth's military traditions, I am offering you one opportunity to withdraw your forces and reconsider your challenge." Laughter erupted across the Sarkonian command deck. Krasnar's breathing vents flared with amusement. "You face the might of the Sarkonian Empire with a handful of ships, yet you offer us the chance to withdraw. Your species' arrogance exceeds even the reports." Chen's expression remained unchanged. "That is your decision, then. Be advised. Protocol 0 is now in full effect. Earth Fleet, execute Operation Thunderstrike." The transmission ended, and before the Sarkonians could respond, the human fleet moved with stunning coordination. Ships that moments ago had appeared sluggish suddenly accelerated at rates that defied Sarkonian sensor analysis. Energy weapons of unprecedented power lanced out from concealed emplacements. The first volley struck 3 Sarkonian vessels simultaneously, bypassing defense shields that had repelled the strongest attacks from a dozen species. As the Eternal Dominance rocked from a near miss, Strategic Overseer Vexillar stared at his readouts in disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. "Their weapons, they're using phase-shifted graviton beams. That technology is theoretical even in our most advanced research." Commander Supreme Krasnar's certainty faltered for the first time in his 2-century military career. Counterattack. All vessels, deploy Omega Pattern offensive. But the human fleet was no longer where it had been seconds ago. Utilizing propulsion systems that seemed to bend space in ways the Sarkonians had only theorized, Earth's vessels executed maneuvers that should have torn them apart from the forces alone. From the assembly observation vessels, the gathered representatives watched in stunned silence as history unfolded before them. The Polarian Security Council member turned to her still shocked colleagues. "I believe," she said quietly, "we are witnessing what happens when humans stop being polite." Awakening the arsenal. The Sarkonian fleet's perfect formation dissolved into chaos as Earth vessels executed maneuvers that defied conventional physics. Ships that had appeared modest in size and capability now revealed their true nature, cutting-edge war machines disguised as diplomatic cruisers. On the bridge of the UES Intrepid, Admiral Chen observed the tactical display with calculated precision. "All vessels, implement combat pattern Epsilon. Prioritize disabling over destruction." Captain Wright acknowledged the order while monitoring real-time battle metrics. "Sir, the Sarkonians are attempting to regroup into their Omega defensive formation." "As expected," Chen nodded. "Execute Phase 2. Across the human fleet, a second layer of concealed systems activated, small objects ejected from previously hidden launch bays, propelling themselves toward the Sarkonian vessels at velocities that made them nearly invisible to tracking systems. Aboard the Eternal Dominance, alarms blared as Strategic Overseer Vexillar struggled to make sense of the sensor readings. "Commander Supreme, I'm detecting multiple small objects approaching our formation. They're moving too fast for our point defense systems to track effectively." Commander Krasnar's breathing vents pulsed rapidly, a sign of growing agitation. "Deploy energy screens at maximum intensity. Prepare for impact." But the objects didn't impact the Sarkonian ships. Instead, they decelerated sharply and attached themselves to the hulls of multiple vessels. For a moment, nothing happened. "Analysis," Krasnar demanded. "They appear to be some form off." Vexillar's explanation was cut short as ship after ship in the Sarkonian fleet reported catastrophic system failures. Propulsion, weapons, and even life support systems shut down simultaneously. "Impossible." Krasnar slammed an armored limb against his command console. "Our cyber defenses are impenetrable." "These aren't cyber attacks," Vexillar realized with growing horror. "They're quantum-entangled field disruptors. They're not hacking our systems. They're altering the fundamental physical properties of our technology." From the assembly observation vessels, the gathered representatives watched in stunned silence. The Medusan analyst turned to his Polarian colleague. "How could they have developed such technology without detection? Our monitoring of Earth's scientific advancements never indicated capabilities at this level." The Polarian's sensory tendrils twisted in contemplation. Perhaps because they deliberately hid their true progress. "Consider how they've behaved since joining the assembly, always deferential, always accommodating, never revealing their full potential." On the Intrepid's bridge, Admiral Chen received updated battle reports. 7 Sarkonian vessels disabled, sir. 5 more showing critical systems failure. No casualties reported on either side. Chen nodded with satisfaction. "Begin targeted EMP pulses on the remaining combat-capable vessels. I want their weapons and propulsion neutralized, but life support protected." Captain Wright studied her console with a curious expression. "Sir, the Sarkonian flagship is attempting to open a communication channel." "Accept," Chen ordered, straightening his uniform. Commander Supreme Krasnar's image appeared on the view screen, his exoskeleton's color pattern reflecting a mixture of rage and bewilderment. What is the meaning of this deception? You have violated assembly protocols by concealing your true military capabilities. Admiral Chen's expression remained impassive. No deception was employed, Commander Supreme. The assembly never asked us to reveal the full extent of our defensive technologies, and we never claimed the vessels we displayed were the limit of our capabilities. This is unprecedented. Krasnar's breathing vents flared. For 8 years, you have presented yourselves as a developing species with modest technology. We presented ourselves exactly as we are, a species interested in peaceful cooperation, Chen replied calmly. The fact that you mistook courtesy for weakness was your error, not our deception. Krasnar's exoskeleton heated visibly. The Sarkonian Empire will not tolerate this humiliation. We demand. You are not in a position to demand anything, Chen interrupted, his tone hardening for the first time. 15 of your vessels are completely disabled. The remainder will be neutralized in approximately 7 minutes. You have 2 options. Surrender honorably or continue this one-sided engagement. For a moment, it seemed Krasnar might choose continued battle despite the hopeless odds. Then, with visible reluctance, he performed the Sarkonian gesture of temporary cessation. We will withdraw our remaining functional vessels. This matter is not concluded, human. On the contrary, Chen replied. According to the ancient right of dominance that you invoked, this matter is very much concluded. The disputed territories remain under Earth administration, and the Sarkonian Empire acknowledges our rightful claim. Krasnar's breathing vents contracted in fury, but he couldn't deny the ancient protocols his own government had invoked. The Sarkonians will honor the terms of the challenge. But know this, Admiral, you have made a powerful enemy today. Chen's expression remained unchanged. We've made a powerful neighbor who now better understands us. I recommend your Empire's leadership review what happened here today very carefully before considering future challenges. After the communication ended, Captain Wright approached Admiral Chen. Sir, should we be concerned about Sarkonian retaliation? They might not honor the terms. They'll honor them, Chen replied confidently. The Sarkonians value their reputation as much as their territory. Breaking the terms would damage their standing with other assembly members. He paused, studying the tactical display as the disabled Sarkonian vessels drifted powerlessly. Besides, we've only shown them a fraction of what we can do if truly threatened. In the Assembly Observation Center, the representatives from 17 species were engaged in heated discussion about what they had witnessed. This changes everything, declared the Arcturian delegate, his crystalline appendages glittering with agitation. The power balance in the Orion arm is completely disrupted. The Medusan analyst raised a calming limb. Perhaps what we're witnessing is not a disruption but a correction. The humans never claimed to be weak. We simply assumed they were because of their diplomatic approach. But why the deception? Demanded the Vexillian representative. Why present outdated technology in official assembly registries? The Polarian Security Council member had been silently processing the battle data. Consider Earth's history, she suggested. According to their own records, which we've all studied, humans evolved on a planet with thousands of competing predator species. Their planetary classification as a death world isn't an exaggeration, it's possibly an understatement. What's your point? Asked the Arcturian. My point, continued the Polarian, is that humans developed a survival strategy that served them well on their homeworld, appear non-threatening until threatened, then reveal overwhelming force. They didn't deceive us. They simply applied their evolutionary strategy to interstellar relations. The observation deck fell silent as the implications settled over the gathered representatives. Finally, the Medusan analyst spoke again. I believe we've all significantly misunderstood our newest assembly members. The question now is, what else have we misunderstood about them? Back on the Intrepid, Admiral Chen received a priority communication from Earth. The holographic image of Defense Secretary Amara Okafor appeared in his private office. Impressive work, Admiral, She began without preamble. The Assembly observation feeds are already generating significant diplomatic ripples. Chen nodded. The Sarkonians have acknowledged our territorial claims and are withdrawing their remaining functional vessels. Protocol Zero implementation was completely successful, and minimal casualties, Okafor noted with approval. Though I suspect that was your addition to the operation parameters. Killing Sarkonians would have been counterproductive, Chen replied. We needed to demonstrate capability, not brutality. Disabled ships make the point without creating blood feuds. Okafor's expression grew serious. The Council is divided on next steps. Some members want to maintain the facade, return to presenting our older technologies publicly while continuing development in secret. Others believe it's time for full technological disclosure. Chen considered for a moment. The galaxy now knows we've been holding back. Returning to the previous approach would only breed distrust. I recommend transparency moving forward, controlled transparency, and the Haringer Protocol. Okafor asked quietly, do we reveal that as well? Admiral Chen's expression darkened slightly. No. Protocol Zero was sufficient to handle the Sarkonians. The Harbinger capabilities remain classified until absolutely necessary. Let's hope the galaxy never needs to see what happens when humans stop being merely assertive and become truly defensive. Secretary Okafor nodded in agreement. Very well. The diplomatic corps is already preparing for the emergency assembly session that will undoubtedly be called. Ambassador Rice will need comprehensive briefing on exactly what capabilities we're willing to disclose. I'll prepare the documentation immediately, Chen assured her. If there's nothing else, Secretary. Just one thing, Admiral. Okafor's hologram leaned forward slightly. The President asked me to convey her personal thanks. Your restraint today prevented what could have escalated into a full-scale interstellar war. The Sarkonians will regroup, reassess, and eventually return to diplomatic channels. You've bought us time and respect in a single operation. After the communication ended, Admiral Chen turned to the viewport in his office, gazing out at the stars beyond. Humanity had revealed one layer of its defenses today, but only one. Like Earth itself, with its deceptively fragile-looking surface concealing a molten core of immense energy, humans had shown the galaxy only the outermost layer of their potential. He hoped it would be enough to secure lasting peace. But if not, well, Protocol Zero was just the beginning. Respect through fire. The Grand Conclave of the Galactic Assembly had never been so crowded. Representatives from all 217 member species packed the chamber, with additional viewing areas hastily constructed to accommodate the unprecedented attendance. 3 standard weeks had passed since the confrontation at Ta City, and the emergency session had been called to address what many were now referring to as the human question. Ambassador Elena Rice entered the chamber flanked by Admiral Chen and an expanded diplomatic team. The murmur that swept through the assembly was markedly different from their previous reception. Less dismissive curiosity, more cautious respect. First Arbiter Exalthek called the session to order. This emergency convocation will address the events at Ta City and their implications for Assembly security protocols. Before formal proceedings begin, the Assembly acknowledges the official resolution of the territorial dispute between the Earth Confederation and the Sarkonian Empire, as settled through the ancient right of dominance. Elena stepped forward to the speaking dais. Unlike previous appearances, she wore no diplomatic smile today, only an expression of calm resolve. Esteemed members of the Assembly, she began, the Earth Confederation recognizes that recent events have raised questions about our technological capabilities and our approach to interstellar relations. I come before you today in a spirit of transparency. From his elevated position, Ambassador Commander Vexstar of the Sarkonians observed with rigid posture. The humiliating defeat of the Empire's fleet had been transmitted throughout Assembly space. His once intimidating presence now carried a different weight. Humans did not deceive the Assembly, Elena continued. We presented ourselves honestly as a species seeking peaceful integration into the galactic community. When asked about our technological capabilities, we provided accurate information about publicly deployed systems. We were never asked to disclose our full military potential, nor would any species represented here have volunteered such information unprompted. Murmurs of reluctant agreement rippled through the chamber. It was true. No species fully disclosed their defense capabilities upon joining the assembly. What troubles many here, First Arbiter Axalthek observed, is not that Earth maintained military secrets, but the extraordinary gap between what you displayed and what you possessed. Some have suggested this represents a deliberate strategy of deception. Admiral Chen stepped forward beside Elena. With respect, First Arbiter, it represents a fundamental aspect of human evolutionary psychology. On our homeworld, we evolved alongside numerous apex predators. We learned that displaying full capability unnecessarily often provokes rather than prevents conflict. Yet when challenged, countered Vexstar, speaking for the first time, you revealed weapons technologies that our analysts still cannot fully comprehend. Your gravitic manipulation systems alone are centuries beyond what your public science suggests should be possible. Elena nodded acknowledgement. The Earth Confederation is prepared to provide technical briefings on specific technologies demonstrated at Ta City as a gesture of good faith. However, I must emphasize that what was revealed represents only a portion of Earth's defensive capabilities. This statement sent another wave of murmurs through the chamber, part alarm, part disbelief. Are you threatening the assembly? Vexstar demanded. On the contrary, Elena replied evenly. I'm being transparent about our position. The technologies revealed at Ta City are our diplomatic fleet's defensive systems. They exist to protect our representatives and our borders from aggression. Earth maintains additional defensive measures that we hope never to deploy. The Polarian Security Council member rose from her position. Ambassador Reyes, if I may address a question directly, Earth has been a member of this assembly for 8 years. During that time, you have been unfailingly cooperative, often accepting compromises that now appear unnecessary given your true capabilities. Why? Elena's expression softened slightly. Because cooperation is our preference. Humanity tried warfare as a first resort for much of our history. It proved consistently ineffective at creating lasting prosperity or security. We joined the assembly seeking genuine partnerships, not dominance. Yet you concealed your true strength, Vexstar insisted. Admiral Chen responded, his voice carrying the weight of military authority. Ambassador Commander, in your 7,000-year history, how often has the Sarkonian Empire revealed its full military capabilities to potential rivals? The difference between our approaches is not one of honesty, but of default posture. You assume dominance until challenged. We assume cooperation until threatened. An uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber as representatives contemplated this distinction. First Arbiter Axalthek broke the silence. The Assembly must now consider appropriate protocols for technological disclosure among member species. However, before we proceed to that matter, we must address the immediate question. What are humanity's intentions given this new recognition of your capabilities? Elena stepped forward again. Our intentions remain unchanged. The Earth Confederation seeks peaceful cooperation, scientific exchange, and mutual prosperity with all assembly species. The difference is that now you understand we engage diplomatically not from weakness, but from choice. Deep in restricted assembly space, the most powerful Sarkonian warship ever constructed moved silently through the void. The inevitable conquest was the Empire's most closely guarded secret, a planet killer that had been under construction for over a century, designed to ensure Sarkonian supremacy should any existential threat ever arise. Commander Supreme Krasnar stood on the bridge, his exoskeleton now bearing the ceremonial markings of one who had undertaken the path of redemption, a Sarkonian ritual for military leaders who had experienced devastating defeat. Status report, he commanded. Fleet Overseer Trasvik approached with formal deference. The primary gravitational displacement cannon is at full charge, Commander Supreme. Target acquisition systems are locked on the human colony world Proxima Centauri. The estimated casualties: 12 million, including 9 million human colonists. Krasnar's breathing vents pulsed slowly, deliberately. The assembly protocols are clear. The humans won their challenge fairly. The territories are rightfully theirs. He paused, contemplating the enormity of what he was about to order. But some matters transcend mere territorial disputes. The humans represent an unprecedented threat to Sarkonian supremacy. Their destruction now, while they remain unaware of our ultimate weapon, is regrettable but necessary. The Empire will face significant diplomatic consequences, Trazvik cautioned. The Empire has weathered diplomatic storms before, Krasnar replied dismissively. Better to ask forgiveness than permission when existential matters are at stake. Begin the firing sequence. Aboard the inevitable conquest, power systems surged as the massive weapon began its activation cycle. Energy readings spiked to levels that would have been detectable from several systems away, had the vessel not been shielded by experimental cloaking technology. Warning, announced the sensor officer suddenly. Detecting multiple anomalies in nearby space. Specify, Krasnar demanded. Unknown energy signatures, materializing directly around our position. Before the Sarkonians could react, space itself seemed to ripple around their supposedly undetectable vessel. 7 objects phased into existence, surrounding the inevitable conquest in a perfect heptagonal formation. Impossible, Trazvik exclaimed. Nothing could have tracked us through our cloaking field. A communication channel opened automatically on their primary display. Admiral Chen's face appeared, his expression grave but not surprised. Commander Supreme Krasnar, he said quietly, the Earth Confederation is disappointed by your decision. Krasnar's breathing vents flared with shock. How did you find us? How could you possibly know that you were planning to destroy one of our colony worlds in violation of assembly law and your own empire's formal concession? Chen finished for him. I mentioned during our last encounter that what was revealed at Ta City represented only a portion of our capabilities. The sensor officer's voice was strained with alarm. Commander Supreme, the objects surrounding us. They're not ships. They appear to be automated defense platforms of some kind. Their energy readings are beyond our scale of measurement. Chen continued calmly. What you're experiencing now is an aspect of the Harbinger Protocol, Earth's final defensive measure. The platforms surrounding your vessel have already neutralized your gravitational displacement weapon through selective quantum field manipulation. They are now prepared to disable your ship entirely. Krasnar's exoskeleton paled, a Sarkonian expression of primal fear. This is an act of war. The Sarkonian Empire will. Will what? Commander Supreme. Chen interrupted. Launch your remaining fleets against an enemy that can detect your most heavily cloaked vessels and neutralize your most powerful weapons before they're deployed. Is that truly in your empire's best interest? For perhaps the first time in his military career, Krasnar found himself without strategic options. What do you want? He asked finally, his voice stripped of its usual authority. Peace, Chen replied simply. Genuine peace, not merely the absence of open conflict. The Earth Confederation is extending an invitation to the Sarkonian Empire to participate in a bilateral defense summit. No deceptions, no posturing. A genuine exchange of security concerns and potential collaborative solutions. Why would we agree to this? Krasnar demanded, though with notably less conviction. Because the alternative is continued escalation until one of our civilizations faces extinction, Chen answered. And despite what you may believe, that is an outcome humans genuinely wish to avoid, even when we have the upper hand. A long silence followed as Krasnar considered the implications. The Harbinger platforms will escort your vessel back to Sarkonian space, Chen continued. A formal diplomatic delegation will contact your government in 3 standard days. I suggest you use that time to consider which path truly serves your empire's long-term interests. The communication ended, leaving the Sarkonian command staff in stunned silence.